3, 2, 1. Hey guys, I'm here to show you my camera bag. I've been using this for the last 6 months, building it up, trying to get it the way I want, and I feel like it's finally at a state where I can show you guys how I work day to day. In this is 2 camera bodies, a Fuji X-T4 and a Fuji X-T3. I got 3 lenses. I got a few shotgun mics, a few lavalier mics. Basically everything that I need to shoot, I have in this bag. I have 2 extra tripods and a light stand, and then everything else is in this bag. I'm going to do a quick breakdown of what's in it, and then we'll go to close-up shots of each individual item. So first, let's open this up. We got 2 microphones. We got a shotgun and an Omni. They're really good. I use them a lot. In this bag, we got my audio equipment, or part of it. The other part is actually recording this. We got the 2 bad boy lenses that I use every single day. They're f2.8s, and they give me a full frame equivalent of 24 to about 210. It's exactly what I need. I do have a few other specialty lenses that I'll use on occasion, but 95% of the time I'm using these 2 lenses. Let's put these back. Then I have this little bag for a little LED light we'll get to later, and then the joys of cable management. There's just 10 or 15 cables in this little bag that you know you'll need. And then this is the X-T3. I'm currently filming on the X-T4. I think APS-C cameras, which these are APS-C cameras, but I think they are exactly what local news cameramen need. I don't think you really need full frame. The depth of field is great on these. You get that cinematic look, but you're not breaking the bank. Here's the X-T3 a little closer. It's a great camera for local news and national news photojournalism. It has everything I need, nothing I don't. I think APS-C sensors are perfect for what we do. I have no issues with not going full frame, but we'll get into that a little bit more when we look at these cameras close up. There's 2 more compartments that are important. We got ND filters, your favorite thing. So whenever I'm filming outside, those 2 lenses have ND filters on them to get everyone looking good with a shallow depth of field. And then my last compartment, I got some handles, a macro lens, which I think everyone should have, additional mounting options. This is a Manfrotto mounting plate. And then just another handle. Oh, and I forgot. Let's open this back up. Batteries, extra lavs, emergency cables, some hex wrenches, just a kind of an extra little compartment for everything I might need. So that's the bag broken down. Let's get a close-up view of all of the stuff, and let me explain how I use it. The first thing we're going to talk about is mounting plates. And one of the issues that I've always had with mirrorless cameras and DSLRs is it takes so much time to mount these things on tripods. You need to always screw them in, unscrew them when you're going handheld, and it's always cumbersome and annoying, and it slows you down. And I've discovered Arca Swiss plates, which are amazing. This is really expensive. It cost me $40, but it's worth every penny because my Fuji cages, the cages that go on my Fujis, actually have an Arca Swiss plate built in. So whenever I want to mount these onto a tripod, lock down, ready to go. You're ready to go handheld. It is perfect. It takes out all of the frustration that I used to have with mounting and dismounting mirrorless cameras onto pro tripods. So that's the main plate I use, and this is always stuck to my tripod. I'm just taking it out for example. The other mounting plate that I have is a Manfrotto plate that I just kind of picked up. I'm not even sure who makes it, but yeah, this is used for when I need to mount a camera on a C-stand, which I'm doing right now, or a light stand, or really get creative angles and put my camera in untraditional places. This doesn't have a quick release plate because typically you're going to be spending a lot of time mounting your camera to wherever it's going to go. It's going to be this top-down position, or it's going to be mounted to a car, or it's going to be mounted in a really unique angle. So the quick release aspect isn't super necessary. The next thing I recommend is a lot of storage. The recording format that I record in is pretty data heavy. So I typically carry around a 5 terabyte hard drive. Most of my day turns are about 60 to 80 gigs. Most of my 5 to 6 minute features get up to the 250 to 350 range. You're dealing with a lot of data when you're shooting these small little cameras and you want things looking good. The next thing I'm going to talk about is lenses. This is a 16 to 55 f2.8. It's what I primarily use for all of my B-roll and my secondary shots during interviews. And what I love about Fuji lenses is they have an aperture ring on the lens. APS-C is perfectly fine when you're shooting news. You don't need full frame. Yeah, this lens, primarily B-roll, secondary wide shot during interviews. And this lens is the 50 to 140, which is a 70 to 200 equivalent, and primary interview lens. And when I need those tight shots of B-roll, I will use this. It has in-body stabilization, so I can use it handheld, but I don't really enjoy it. This thing needs to stay on a tripod, in my opinion. And these two lenses will do 99, 95% of what you shoot. If you got these two, you're set. Now, for that extra 5% of footage, I really recommend getting a cheap macro lens so you can get those tight, detailed shots. I use this on almost every single one of my shoots. It's just for 1 or 2 shots. It's really worth it. It gets that unique look that some stories really need. And this is a cheap lens. I think I got it for 150 bucks new. It's all you need. You don't need to spend too much money on a macro lens, but you definitely should have one. And this lens, which I have not used yet in a story, is a 40mm f1.4. It is from the 1960s. It has a really dreamy character that I would love to use for flashbacks, for investigative pieces, or get really unique footage that stands out from everything else I just showed you. It's a specialty lens that I'm keeping in my bag. Not sure when I'm going to use it, but when I do, I'm going to be really happy I have it. So the next thing I want to talk about is ND filters. You have to be using these if you're using mirrorless cameras outside. If you don't, you're cranking up your shutter speed and everything looks really choppy. You gotta own some of these if you're gonna be filming anything outside with mirrorless cameras. And these are really cheap Tiffin ND filters. I'm actually not a big fan of these. I think this is gonna be the next thing I upgrade in my kit, just because they work great in terms of mounting them on a lens and shooting with them. The issue is that whenever you're shooting, it's a variable ND filter. So whenever you're shooting and you loop around, you can actually get this weird X vignetting that the ND filter produces, and it is really ugly, and sometimes you just miss it when you're shooting outside because the viewfinder isn't super bright. It's not ideal. I know other ND filters are a lot better at preventing that X happening, but it's what I gotta live with right now. It's definitely gonna get upgraded in the future. The next thing in my gear bag is this little pouch, and inside of it is a little light, and this thing is amazing. First, it has magnets on the back, so you can pretty much put it anywhere. And then once I kick this on, it's going to be bright, but you have the standard daylight to Kelvin transition that most LED lights have. And then it has a little trick where you can kick it into an RGB light. So it can be whatever color you want. And this is great for investigative stories. This is great for just any sort of background. Sports teams, you find their color, you make things dramatic. With investigative pieces, this thing will really enhance the look of your footage. The next thing in this bag is cables. You are going to be shocked by how many cables you are going to need when you're shooting with mirrorless cameras. I have a wide variety. This goes from a microphone into my camera. This one goes into a microphone into my phone, which is great. This, which I'll show you later, is a splitter. So you can put two microphones directly into your camera and have two separate audio channels. It's a lifesaver. And then there's more just generic cables. The next thing I want to talk about is microphones. And I use a large variety of microphones whenever I'm getting audio in the field. The main one that I use is this Rode. This is my onboard, on-camera microphone. It's a great directional shotgun mic. Picks up audio from quite a distance. I use this a lot during COVID. It's just an all-around great shotgun microphone. Runs off a 9-volt. I've had it for over a year and never replaced it. It's just one of the most reliable shotguns I've had. Perfect. The next microphone is this little $20 omnidirectional mic that my boss Brad Bogot got me. And this thing is great. I really, really love this because I can plug a lavalier microphone into the end of this, and then I can use this to capture audio. And I've actually used this quite a bit during COVID because I'll put this on a light stand and put this right next to our subject and get clean, crisp audio from them. And it's better than a stick mic. It is my favorite way to gather audio during COVID when you can't use your lavs. I forgot to mention one bad thing about this microphone. Since it is battery powered, it seems to mess with lavalier mics. You cannot plug this into a lavalier mic and get clean audio. There's a lot of distortion and you just can't do it. It's quite a bummer. I really want to get this replaced with a microphone that doesn't require a battery so I can use shotgun mics with lavalier mics. That would be great, and that's another next step on the things I will be purchasing for my job. The next thing I want to talk about is my lavalier setups. I have a few different ones because some are more reliable than others, and it's just I've been really tweaking my audio setups, and I think I finally found something that I'm really happy with. So originally when I was using mirrorless cameras, I was using these Sennheiser mics that are really popular in photojournalism. I have really bad interference issues with these. I'm not sure if it's a frequency issue or what, but nearly on every single shoot, I have to stop an interview and say, like, wait, there's a crackle in the audio. The floor in the audio is pretty high and I can hear crackling and hissing. It's just, they sound great when they work, but they don't work all the time. So instead of these, I started using a Comica system where you get two of these transmitters and one receiver, and this is what I'm currently using to record this, and they are great. So I have extra lavs whenever I need them, and then these are great because you have an onboard microphone in your transmitter, so you can just put this down wherever you want, record audio however you want, but then you can also use them as a traditional lavalier setup and get great audio. The bass needs to be boosted in these, I'll show you later, but For the price point, these are 250 bucks, 300 bucks. You cannot go wrong with these. They're idiot proof, they sound great, there's no interference. These have been a lifesaver. Audio has been such a struggle with these mirrorless cameras, and this seems to be the best solution I've found. So look into these, do your research, or go the Rode Wireless Go route. They're pretty much identical to the Rode Wireless Go's. There's just 2 transmitters instead of 1. Yeah, I cannot recommend these enough. So now I'm shooting on the X-T3 and showing you the X-T4. And this is the camera in its most stripped down state. Just has a lens on it, an ND filter, and the cage. And you can actually build these cameras up pretty nicely to fit any sort of audio that you want, or any sort of lights, and prepare you for any situation. So with the X-T4, I have a top handle that I usually put on it, and a side handle. And these are through nano rails, so they slip on and clamp on pretty tightly. They will not move anywhere. So now that I have that built, let's start putting some microphones on it. So what I'm going to show you guys is my old audio setup. I still use this on occasion, but I'm primarily using the Comica setup now. So the first thing is adding a shotgun, which that is out of frame. Let's pan up. And then adding a lavalier. So here's the Sennheiser receiver. And I will plug both of these into this splitter. So I'll plug this into here. And then I will get another cable, plug that into the Sennheiser, and then plug that into the splitter. And then I will plug the other side into the shotgun. So as you can see, I have the Rode shotgun mic, which is on, and then the Sennheiser, which is off, which would be the right channel. So you can get 2 channels of audio into one auxiliary cord on these mirrorless cameras. It's a lifesaver. It really, really helps. So what you're looking at right now is my Comica setup. I'm using 2 channels of audio into the camera, one with this lavalier microphone setup that I would put on an interview subject, and then the other is up here, and I use that as scratch audio, and then also if I need to get nat sound of something, I don't use it on the camera, I take it off and I put it next to my subject. So this thing is that comes in so handy because it is so versatile in its uses. You can use it as a lav, you can use it as an onboard mic, or you can use it as a little tiny mic you can put anywhere to get nat sound. This setup takes away a lot of the stress and a lot of the audio issues that you have with traditional lavalier mics. They're great. They do have a few flaws. The battery life isn't great. And you do have to EQ them occasionally in your editing system, which I'll show you right now. You just have to lift up the bass levels, and then it sounds really, really great. Now, when shooting with mirrorless cameras like this, I typically keep my shutter speed either at 60th of a second or 1/20th of a second, depending on if I'm inside or if I'm outside, but I rarely adjust my shutter speed outside of those 2 shutter speeds. The way that I adjust my exposure is through the aperture ring and the ISO dial. Now with ENG cameras, you really never wanted to use gain because it made your video look terrible. But with these mirrorless cameras and DSLRs, you can boost the ISO so high without a drop in quality. It is amazing. I typically shoot outside at 200 or 400 ISO, and then if I'm inside, I actually might put it on auto ISO. I've shot this in riots, I've shot this in pitch black situations where it goes up to 12,800 ISO, and it looks so good. It looks arable. That high of an ISO looks kind of grainy, but it looks so much better than our ENG cameras that we're so used to. And then with aperture, I try to shoot everything at f4 or f3.5 and dip into the f2.8s when I'm inside or absolutely need the extra light. And occasionally I will shoot higher than that at f5.6 or f8 in case I need that depth of field to tell the story. But normally it's kept locked in at f4 or 3.5. Okay, let's talk about function buttons. I've set these cameras up so I do not have to dig through the menus when I'm out on a shoot. Everything that I need access to, I have it on a function button or on dials and whatnot. So the first function button that I set up is my audio adjustments. So I manually adjust my audio, and that is perfect. It works really well, quick access. I use that on every single shoot. It's a mandatory requirement to have quality audio, and that's how I do it. The next thing is an auto white balance lock. So rather than taking white balance in the field, I lock it. That might be a little foreign to some of you guys. So whenever I hit this button, whatever white balance is running through the camera, it freezes that, and then I can use that white balance for the remainder of the shoot. It comes in handy so often because the auto white balance is great if you're having a continuous shot, but if you're editing, some things might have a pink or magenta hue or a teal hue, and you really need to lock down your white balance on these cameras to have consistent looking footage. The next option is a button on the top of the camera, and that is face detection. So whenever I'm doing interviews, I typically have face detection on. It's super reliable. I have no issues with it. And it's the way I perform most of my interviews. So I have that set up on the top of my camera. The next setting that I have on the camera is my focus settings. So I typically use autofocus whenever I'm using these cameras, and you jump in between single point, continuous, or manual focus. And I have all of that quick, easy, and accessible in that little dial right there. It's great. I really enjoy this style of selecting focus, autofocus settings. It's just become second nature to me with these cameras. To finish up this tour of my bag, I'm going to show you my recording setups. I shoot in HD, not in 4K. I shoot in 60 frames a second, H.264, and I actually shoot in a format called Eterna. It's a specialty recording setting for Fujis. It's very similar to Rec 709, which is typically used in Sonys and Canons and Panasonics. You do need to use some post-processing to make the saturation and the contrast look good, but it does work in a pinch straight out of camera. It gives me the quality of footage that I want out of these cameras. I want to be able to push the exposure a little bit, push the color and white balance a little bit, and Eterna works fabulous for that. So the next thing I want to show you in the menus is time code. Unlike a lot of DSLRs and mirrorless cameras, this has a continuous time code that doesn't restart every single time you hit record. So you actually can go in and manually input your time code. You can set it to time of day or just runtime, and you restart it every single shoot, and you're good to go. I think that ends the tour. I cannot recommend these cameras enough. I know Sony, Canon, and all the other camera manufacturers have something similar, but I really, really do enjoy Fuji. They give me everything I need and nothing I don't. I've used these in protests, in riots, for long form, 5-minute, 6-minute pieces, for day turns. I've used these in almost every single situation, and they've never let me down. It takes a while to get used to, but once you get over that learning curve, you never want to go back to an old school E&G camera. I'm telling you, it's really nice. If you guys have any questions, just let me know and I'll try to answer them.